How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and today we are going to be talking about the thermals and performance of the NZXT Kraken X63 RGB liquid AIO 240 millimeter radiator. That's a mouthful to say. But if you want to see me install it, then you can click up here, and I got a video where I go through pretty much the entire thing from start to finish of putting it in my case. And there are some interesting things, mainly being that this fan right here that came with it did not work out of the box. And I don't know if that's NZXT's fault or it was an open box from Micro Center. So after talking with staff from the Micro Center, they said that I could return the entire system and they would replace it with a new one, or I could do nothing, pretty much. That was my only option. I asked if I could just replace the fan, one for one fan, and they said no, they can't do that. So instead, I just put a stock 240 millimeter fan in there, and it seems to be working great. But just for reference, this fan, there's more blades, different pitch, so perhaps it would be marginally different. But I think, generally speaking, it's about the same, especially when you consider that I have 4 fans now blowing intake into the radiator directly to it. So let's just get on into it. I just realized I keep looking at my computer, but it just looks like I'm looking off screen, but my computer actually sits right here next to me, so I can look into it and remember everything I've done to it, because it changes minorly frequently. But I don't have any laboratory grade equipment to test anything, but I do think I can provide some real world results, because this is how I think a normal person might have it set up, and not in a laboratory where everything else is constant. I get it as constant as I can. I try to keep it as cool as I can in this room, but overall it's still a confined room in a computer with very real parts doing real tasks. Getting into the conditions of my testing, we have the testing being done in this room right here. It's a small 8x10 room, not a ton of circulation, but the temperature is fairly constant in here, especially at the beginning if I'm not under a heavy load for a exceptionally long time. So I think definitely the room temperature can be treated as a constant here. It was 71 degrees Fahrenheit, or more accurately, like 21 degrees Celsius, which will be a better measurement for CPUs and measurements to base off of that. Before this, to get another kind of baseline, I would say, is that I was running a 120 millimeter liquid cooler, H60 Hydro Series. It's a Corsair cooler, not super good, probably not good at all and most standards, but it was top mounted. Not that that makes a huge difference, but it's a big step up coming to this 240 millimeter system. And when it was at steady state, just kind of running normally, I would say the temperatures roughly range between 45 and 50 degrees Celsius. So the other big thing to consider, other than the ambient temperature in the room, is the big thing, the processor itself. So I am running an i7-7700K. So that is obviously a slightly older generation processor, and it's running a 4.2 base clock, though I have it at an overclocked 4.5 gigahertz. Its base clock will draw roughly 90 watts of power, so you can reasonably assume that it is drawing slightly more than that, so it should be running a little bit hotter, so it should allow the cooler to really ramp up and try to compensate for that. So as soon as I booted up the computer, I pretty much pulled up just these two things, and then OBS so I could record. Obviously, that's why my GPU is running at 48% right now. But essentially, the computer is fresh, it's cool, and after letting it run for 10-15 minutes or so, this is kind of where I came to, with a average steady state temperature of around 39 degrees C, which is, I would say, probably about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than the steady state from my previous 120 millimeter H60 liquid cooler. So I'm pretty happy with just the steady state, but normally when I'm on my computer, I'm running at something a little higher. Maybe it's 50%, maybe it's 70%. But for this, I think the most accurate way to kind of really figure how hard this liquid cooler can push is let's run it at 100%. And let's do that for a little while. So here we go. I have booted up a video editor and I started to compile a video and export it. And here you're going to see my CPU go up to 100% usage at 4.5 gigahertz. Initially, the CPU temperature jumps up to about 74 degrees C, and then quickly it starts to come back down to around 71, 72 degrees, fluctuating in between there, which is honestly a fantastic steady state. That's kind of where at 100% CPU load, I know that this cooler can handle literally anything this CPU can do because it's at 100%. And for a little comparison, when I was doing this same test with the H60 Hydro Series, and that was only a 120 millimeter fan mounted at the top, it was kind of teetering the line of 80 degrees C. So this is probably running 10 degrees cooler than that. And I would say that generally speaking, when you're gaming, your CPU isn't at 100% either. It's, most games these days are GPU bound and not CPU bound. So I would say that I do give this cooler a thumbs up approval for the normal applications. And if you're wondering if it's a good fit for you, then I definitely recommend you check it out. But the one thing I did notice about this for myself is that the 280 millimeter radiator is big. I mean, I have a full tower case and there was still some complications on where I could actually fit this in my case. If I wanted to put it on the top of my case, it would not fit without taking all three fans out. And I didn't really want to take all the fans out because then I have no exhaust out the top, and my intake, although from the front is not bad because I got some 280 millimeter fans in there, which are, real big guys. I felt like it might be choking the system just a little bit more because, one, there are just less fans in general in the case, and there's less places for air to escape, with the exception of that one back exhaust fan. And I didn't really want to be pushing warm air over top of my GPU any more than I had to. I think in this configuration, it flows a little more naturally instead of getting pushed down into the case, and it's getting pushed still over the GPU, but it's over and up potentially. Well, that was my real quick test at how this liquid cooler performs because I was running a little hot, about 80 degrees C under a full load, and I kind of wanted to drop that, which I think this definitely did. We're now kind of steady stating at 100% CPU at around 71 degrees C, which I am much more comfortable with. And I think the configuration lends itself a lot better to the case. And I hope that if I could convince you to buy this, then I have done that. I will note that this is the RGB, but there's another one that has like numbers on it, and you can see the temperature of your CPU on the display, which is really cool, but it's like $100 more. And I cannot possibly imagine that that is worth $100. I mean, what I did was I just programmed the RGB on my RAM to go from green to red, and the hotter my CPU gets, the redder my RAM gets. So it's a pretty easy way to judge quickly as to how hot I'm getting. And if it's deep red, then I know, okay, maybe I'm pushing it. But since I got this cooler, it hasn't really gotten to deep red except for when it is under a 100% load, which is not super often. I'm Keegs, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this very quick review of a normal application for the NZXT X63. I love talking about computers, changing parts out. I know it's a little random, but it's something I really enjoy, and I'm going to keep posting stuff like this as I upgrade my computer, I get new parts, I test different things, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you all next time.